I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Vinik, VP of Board of Director for AMP, and Pablo Orozco, Florida DOT Structural Maintenance Engineer, right? So just a quick background, I guess. This is the one connecting Keys, Florida Keys, and one of the longest bridges.
Good morning, everyone. So the American version, Paul, I'm Pablo. So good thing that there was a lot of technical stuff presented before, so you learn all those terms, so we don't have to go into it. So that was good. Thank you. So we're here to talk about part of the scope of the rehabilitation of the old 7-mile bridge. My office is located in District 6 in Miami, and we cover also the Florida Keys. So we had this project that included the rehabilitation of the old 7-mile bridge, but this presentation is going to be mostly related to coding. So I'll present part of the history on the bridge, and then Paul will present the technical part of the coding. So the old 7-mile bridge. For this project, the designer was Bob Foran from BCC, so he's in the audience. So any questions, he'll be able to help us. But we had, the contractor was SAFO along with SICRA, and we had WSP to provide the CI services. But GPI provided us the coding evaluation and the coding CI inspection. So we'll go into that. So the project lasted about 4 years, and it was over $42 million to do this rehabilitation, and that's part of an agreement, 30-year agreement that we have with Monroe County to preserve this bridge for the next 30 years. So just to provide some history, the bridge, I guess, was built as part of the railway construction by Henry Flagler, which was a pioneer and a rich man that funded the Standard Oil Company with Rockefeller. So he was a very important person for the Florida East Coast Railway, and he brought the first train and only train to Key West. So he did the construction of the railway, and that included several bridges and the old 7-mile bridge. So the old 7-mile bridge was built between 1905, 1906 to 1912, and during that time there was 3 major hurricanes during that original construction, one in 1906, 1909, and 1910. But finally it was completed in 1912, was open to services, and it continued that way until another major hurricane, the Labor Day hurricane in 1935, completely destroyed large sections of the railway. So at that point, the Florida Department of Transportation, which former name was State Road Department, I guess we acquired the railway right away for about $640,000, and that was 118 miles of right away, so it was pretty cheap. So in 1936 through 1938, Bud Duncan, which was the chief engineer for the State Road Department at that time, decided to convert all bridges to all these railroad bridges to vehicular bridges, and he did that for the old 7-mile bridge by removing the rails and adding floor beams on top of the existing structure, and adding a concrete deck with rails, and he reused the railroad tracks as railings, as you can see on the picture right there. So then that continues until 1982, when we finished the construction of the new 7-mile bridge, and at that point we just closed the old 7-mile bridge and converted it into pedestrian bridge. So it is located, again, the old 7-mile bridge used to connect the middle Keys of Marathon to the lower Keys, Vinik Key, right? So right now, the department only owns the section, the 2-mile section of the old 7-mile bridge that goes from Knights Key in Marathon to Pigeon Key. And Piyuki is also a historic island. That's where all the original construction workers used to live when they were building the old 7 Mile Bridge. So when you drive to the Keys, the next time that you stop, when you get to Marathon, before you take the 7 Mile Bridge, you can park on the east side, and you can walk, bike, run, whatever you want to do over the restored old 7 Mile Bridge portion. And that's a 2-mile walk one way, so you will enjoy it. But and then on the south, I guess on the west end of the bridge, you can do some fishing, but that part is owned by FDOT. So DOT remained the owner of the 2.2 mile section of the bridge, but after 120 years of being in service, and since 1992 that we did not perform preservation of the bridge and the steel, then we have some issues, right? So we needed to, I guess, evaluate it, and we found out that the substructure was in good shape, and mainly was because there was not much steel use in the columns. And we had deep cover as well, so that made it easy to preserve them for a long time. However, the steel did not get painted as we do it frequently, and I didn't find the last time that we rehabilitated the bridge, but I'm assuming that after 1982 we didn't do much painting. So we had that all coating there with some lead as well. Why, I guess it is, I'm mentioning that is because also the bridge is located in the National Marine Sanctuary, so that means very challenging permitting and construction, I guess, activities that we needed to create complete containment system to be able to, I guess, capture everything and not letting any material getting into the water. So this is just a picture of what we had at the time of doing, the abrasive blasting, removing the existing coating. This is the bridge was a structural deficient, a fracture critical bridge, 2 main girders and floor beams. So this is a picture of that one girder, main girder, with the bottom flange, with severe section loss. And then you can see in these following pictures just a view of the cross members and some part of the floor beams that needed either partial replacement or full replacement. So for that, we had to do a lot of steel repairs as part of the project. And the contractor, I guess they built a shop on site. That's why, the QP3 was needed there. And they brought a computerized plasma coating machine. So that made it easy to just fabricate any steel element that was needed on site. And it was easy to just go and confirm, the dimensions that were needed. So the large amount of the floor beams were completely replaced. And so he had also a shop for, the different coating activities in place. So an abrasive blast booth was there. And there was coating done on site on the bridge, as well as for the new steel, in their chambers. The heavy corrosion, it was heavy, but fortunately or surprisingly, the main girder was in really good shape, and the majority of the work was done for the cross frames and the floor beams, and of course we had lead paint on it. So once all that was blasted to near white, then we proceed and apply the APL system that we have in FDOT. This is just to show you a cross view or a cross section of the bridge, or a typical section of the bridge, and just to show you what we did on the column, just spall repairs. Then for the structural steel, a lot of steel replacement and splicing and new members being installed, and we also did some deck sealing and joint work on it. We added, in addition, we had some pedestrian railings added in front of the original railings from 1938. So you can, when you walk there at the bridge, you'll see all that, and I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy it. So we have project challenges like any project, the location, we are in a warm climate all year long, and it's one of the most aggressive environments in the United States, if not the most. So having a steel structure, this is the only state steel structure that we have in Monroe County. And we're not going to be building another steel structure there, but we need to preserve this one. So we had Hurricane Irma at the beginning of the project. As well, the contractor was trying to use on a 2.2 mile of cutting work. The contractor wanted to use multiple cuttings as well, cutting systems. So we had that challenge of what was going to be used. There was some supply chain issues. As the project was going to last 4 years, so that was a very high risk for the contractor as well. Well, you have workers that some of them will speak only one language, and that was either Portuguese, Spanish, English, or Creole. So that was another challenge, and I guess Paul will provide some information about it. COVID was right there in the middle, or towards the last third of the project. So that was another challenge for the Keys, only one way in, and a lot of restrictions during that time. And of course, the salt, that was sprayed into the steel after every coating. So there was some challenge there to be able to, do some prep work in between coatings as well. And then, as any steel repairs project or coating project, there are locations where it's very difficult to access, like the top flanges and some of the, issues with the bearings, the steel bearings that we have in place. So Irma, Category 4 that had landfall in 2017 was 132 miles per hour. So the hotel rooms went from $250 per night to $600 per night. That's a huge challenge. And again, the contractor have to deal with demobilization and all the stuff, so thankfully that did not affect the cost, so it was good for us. We had a really great contractor. And then the supply chain, as well as not being able to get material there, as well as personal items for workers, since, many of, there's only one access, and that was shut down, and even, I think Paul is going to provide some details about it. We needed to have some IDs for workers to be able to get into the job site. So it was very, very challenging there. So now I let Paul continue.
It took about 4 years to complete the project. So any project that takes that long, you're going to have staff turnover and cost increases. In this case, some pretty exorbitant cost increases when you're talking about COVID and major hurricanes. The 4 languages. Safo, the contractor, the prime, that's a Brazilian company. So some of their employees spoke Portuguese, mostly their managers and things. Local employees, a lot of them speak Spanish. There were Haitian employees hired that spoke Creole. And so English for the rest of us. But getting the communication channels through 4 different languages was quite a challenge. People translating right in the middle of meetings to other folks, and you can never, ever take communication for granted, even when it's just one language. So multiply that by 4. COVID restrictions, they shut down access to the Keys, and you had to have special permits to get into the Keys. One of those was a Monroe County resident card. Well, all of a sudden, counterfeit cards started showing up, and that got shut down. And so workers had to have a essential worker letter, critical worker endorsement, essentially, from FDOT or other agencies to get into the Keys. Then, the obvious with COVID is employees missing work time because they're sick. So, or hopefully nothing worse. Material shortages and costs, everything went up. The abrasive costs went up. The steel costs went up. The coatings went up. And the contractor, to, reduce costs a little bit, switched from PPG coatings to Sherwin-Williams at about span 120. So keeping up with what coatings were used here versus over here, and making sure they weren't intermingled. You're not supposed to put a PPG coating over a Sherwin-Williams primer, or vice versa. So keeping up with all that, making sure things were done properly was another challenge. And the system used was an FDOT APL system. Different states, different lingo, but MPL, APL, AML. It was an organic zinc epoxy urethane system used throughout the project. A lot of the steel was fabricated on site. The challenge with the structure that is that low to the water in that kind of an environment, you've got the Gulf of Mexico to the north, and you've got the Atlantic Ocean to the south. There's always trade winds, there's salt spray, you can always smell the ocean from that bridge. And anytime there was a lapse in project activities, things had to be cleaned because there's salt contamination. And in the picture here, you can see one of the inspectors performing a salt test on some of the new steel fabricated. The top flanges and bearings took a lot of corrosion, as well as the floor beams. Most of the floor beams were replaced. And in some areas you just have to default to do the best you can. And I think that's what happened at some of the bearings. So what did it look like when we're done, right? You've seen a lot of the horror pictures of huge section loss and things. Well, here's the SP10 blast on one of the main girders. Here's a picture. You can see the floor beams, a lot of section loss, holes right through it. But it has been blasted, and I would presume that probably was replaced, but I'm not positive. Here you can see some more of the section loss around one of the bearings, and you can see the lower flange of the main girder is a built-up beam with back-to-back angles. Some of the design things we try to avoid nowadays. Some more pictures. Here's the blast underway. You can see the old paint next to the new paint. I guess I should stay to the microphone. Hopefully y'all can hear me. But you can see, Tony mentioned it earlier, and I'll pile on because if a bridge ever had lead paint on it, it probably still does. So even though it's been painted, blasted and painted in the past, there's usually some area that got missed or something that wasn't accessible. And so anyway, it's something to be very careful about. This structure had leaded paint on it. Here's a picture indicating the prime coat and the stripe of the intermediate epoxy. And this one's, a plug for inspection. Here's a holiday that was caught by an inspector. And I don't know if I can zoom in, but what you're looking at is the inspector's mirror over the side of the, I can't tell if that's a girder or what it is I used to know. But anyway, you can see the rust in the mirror. And that's what the picture's supposed to indicate, is showing you the holiday in the primer, and it didn't get coated. Well, it did get coated, but after being re-looked at. So here's how it looks now. And here's a shot from in between the two main girders showing the cross bracing and the shiny new floor beams in place. And that was another, most of the floor beams were replaced. Jacks were installed. They jacked up each section and then inserted the floor beams and replaced the old. And Pablo, that was the contractor, that was through an RFI that the contractor submitted because it was just easier to do that than to repair them in place. Here's another picture of the fascia of the main girder. Shows some of the containment and walkway. I like this picture especially well because this is the new and the old 7 mile. Side by side, you can see the new is a post-tension segmental. The old sitting there underway being preserved, and as is the new 7. You can see they're applying metallizing to the columns and repairing some of the concrete. So the old 7 right now looks like a shiny new penny. And it's an awesome structure. If you ever get the chance to visit, going to the Florida Keys is a lot like going to the Caribbean without having to leave the United States. That's my opinion anyway. Some great diving and seafood. But I don't know if you saw True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis, but they did quite a big explosion there on the old 7 as part of the movie, and I think they jumped out of the ambulance just before it got blown off the bridge. And the moral of the story is, if you don't preserve your bridges, here's what happens. So it was a wonderful learning experience to be involved in this project, and at least you don't get too many opportunities to participate in the preservation of a 120-year-old structure with all that much history. And thank you very much. Yes, questions?
Quick question. Do you know if these bridges get hit by the lightning? Because I know Florida is full of lightning. And are you going to have any car moving over this bridge or not, or just pedestrian?
I don't know about the lightning. Hopefully not. But the cars, yes, we're allowing, it's restricted. It's mostly for pedestrians, but we can put trucks up to 17 tons. That was the idea for emergency response. And then also some of the people that manage the island also gets access to the island through there. But if you go there, you could, they didn't pay me to do this, marketing, but there is a trolley that you can get, and then you hop on it, and they take you all the way to the island as well. So that's another thing. But yeah, if you get there, you park before you get to the bridge, and then you can walk by, run.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.